What do you make of the timing of this? Because we've been talking in the last couple of mornings about the fact that there have been overnight strikes. It takes another level of boldness, potentially also an indication of the kind of threat level to those forces when they operate during the day, surely.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I think this marks, by my understanding anyway, by my calculations, the 7th in 8 days worth of strikes. And as you say, it's the first really sort of like during the daytime hours, particularly the volume of which they're doing. I think it's more of an indication that they're starting to degrade in a significant way, anyway, the air defence capabilities along the Persian Gulf for the Iranian infrastructure that's used to target the cargoes. And here we can see, obviously, CENTCOM footage showing some of these strikes over the last sort of few days. And it's interesting as well, the fact that I think several of us, including myself, were expecting this to almost escalate a little bit more than it has over the last 24 hours. We've seen this period now. I think most people thought maybe 2-3 days, a week tops. And obviously this has gone over the 8-day period where we can start to expect the escalatory ladder, so to speak, rise, where one or other side, more likely the Americans, will actually take more militarily riskier approaches. And as we can see from this latest round today, so far it just seems to be more strikes against military infrastructure on the coast, which is no bad thing in of itself, because if they're being used to target the cargo ships, that's obviously, this is something that does need to be addressed, and the military can do that.
Talk about kind of the measure of risk and escalation. It seems notable, and correct me if I'm wrong, it seems notable that in response to these strikes, Iran has been targeting US military infrastructure and sites itself, whether that's in Kuwait, Bahrain, elsewhere, that it hasn't in this round been targeting Gulf states' petrochemical industries and refineries, that Iran seems to be kind of trying to calibrate its response here too.
Yeah, I think it's really interesting. 2 months ago, this would have been met with, as you said, strikes against either civilian infrastructure, particularly the tourist infrastructure in the UAE, as well as energy infrastructure across those Gulf states. And the idea by the Iranians was to cause such pressure on America's allies through horizontal escalation that will cause the wedge between the Americans and their Gulf allies, which they need critically to host their military bases to target Iran more directly. By not doing that, I think in the last 30 days we've seen the pressure diplomatically placed on Iran, particularly by states like the UAE, by Saudi Arabia and Kuwait, to sort of limit those just to the American military facilities. And it has to be said, 10 years ago, this would have been almost unfathomable for significant US bases in the region, particularly the 7th Fleet on Bahrain, to be attacked in such a direct manner by the Iranians, to not then incur, like I say, on the escalatory ladder, further repercussions rather than just targeting strikes against missile bases.
It's interesting. It reminds me of 2021, following the killing of Qasem Soleimani, and the Iranians targeted US military bases in Iraq, and they calibrated that response to try and find where they all stood on the escalatory ladder.
Exactly.
With all of this in mind, this is a very different situation. It's much bigger. It's ongoing. It is ongoing. What is the strategy here for the US in particular? Because it seems to be leading the tempo at the moment.
Yeah, exactly. This is actually really interesting when we look at it from the political and the military angle. Now, any military strike or military action is a tool of foreign policy, and the strategy behind it politically hasn't really been conveyed. And I think the strikes that we've seen over the last sort of 7 days, 8 days, it really sort of it's an evolution of this conflict, which is still only 4 months old. It's, relatively speaking, a very young conflict. It's yet to mature or to progress into like a middle conflict or a middle war. And, it started off with these sort of decapitation strikes against the Iranian government by the American and Israeli strikes back in February 28th. And now we can really see this is almost evolved into like a war for Hormuz, the control of the Straits. So I think we can see this now permeating through the next couple of weeks. But like I say, that escalatory ladder, it's going to be interesting to see who just ratchets his, the notch ever so slightly more to put more pressure on the other to come back down.